Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Dragonfly Insight. And we're really excited to have you here. And for our panelist today, Lindley Cotton, she's the president of GCommerce. And hi, Lindley, welcome.
Hi.
So glad you could join us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Lindley leads the team over at GCommerce and has been in the digital world for many, many years and has a depth of experience with hotels and resorts that it's far to compete with, with others. And so she has a tremendous amount of wisdom in this space, and they're a great partner to work with. We've done a number of different things with them, and are always very excited when we have a hotel that uses their services. They typically perform super well. So thank you for that, Lindley, and your team at GCommerce. I want to start out just by asking a more personal question. How are you and your family, and how have you been navigating through this craziness that is 2020?
Well, thanks for the question. It's been interesting to say the least. All things considered, I think we're doing really well. We live just outside of Park City, Utah, and my husband and I, we have two daughters. One is 18 and one is almost 3. So quite the span there in age range. And back in March, when the world just came crashing down, we just hunkered down together and really spent the summer here at home all together, which was nice. We got to spend some more time together. And luckily, my husband and I are both really fortunate to have jobs where we can work from home. And our older daughter was able to watch our younger daughter while we worked. So that worked out really well. After about 6 months of that, though, both girls are back, either going to part-time school or daycare. So that's nice too, to kind of get back into a little bit of a rhythm. I'd say the silver lining in all this is that we were able to spend a lot of quality time together. I'm able to do things like work out in the morning, which I wasn't able to do when I worked from the office, and maybe start dinner a little earlier than I used to as well. So there's pros and cons to the whole thing for sure, but overall we're doing well and feel really fortunate.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are doing well. I know I have a 16-year-old son. I only have one, and I've been super thankful to spend so much more time with him than I thought I would have in his 16th year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's definitely been a blessing from that perspective. So moving into some of the discussion that we had earlier, you have had, GCommerce has had a lot of success with a lot of different hotels. I've read some of the case studies and some of the things that have been released. So I'd really like to start out by asking, what advertising and online strategies have you found that are working really well for hotels right now?
Sure. So as I think most of us can attest to, people generally aren't traveling internationally or across the country as much as they used to, and they're spending a lot more time, with their immediate family, like I was just talking about. And there's business travel and group travel is fairly non-existent. We're seeing demand around destination and experiential travel, providing accommodations and options where people can stay and participate in socially distanced activities, and showcasing that through your marketing is one strategy that's working really well for us. If your property is fortunate enough to be located near an outdoor attraction or the mountains, the beach, something like that, then you're probably doing pretty well, assuming you have, the right strategy in place. For hotels that don't have that luxury, they really need to work harder to form connections to socially distanced activities within the area. The more properties can showcase that outdoor space as well as socially distanced experiences that they can help facilitate, the better. Also, we've really seen some good traction with user-generated content. It's really powerful for properties to utilize as they're welcoming guests back to their properties and gathering positive reviews that people may be leaving, gathering pictures that people are taking, and obviously getting permission to use those and repurposing them in the marketing messaging. What that does is it really gives the hotel, that credibility of providing a safe and enjoyable place to be, which, speaking personally, that's what we're all yearning for. If I see other people going to a specific destination and property, and then people are talking about how clean it was, how safe it was, I don't have to interact with people if I don't want to, and there's generally positive feedback, I'm going to load my family into the car and go. There's so much pent-up demand, but we have to be able to break through that fear barrier.
Yeah, I think that's great, Lindley, because I've seen a lot of hotels, really focus on their cleaning procedures and all of those pieces, but being able to have it come from the user-generated content versus coming on a page in a hotel that can't come to life, that, let's face it, cleaning protocols are pretty boring. They're not sexy, right? So, I think that's great to focus on that guest experience and what others are saying. That's a terrific idea there. So we've heard a lot also about localizing content and localizing ad campaigns, because as you said, people aren't necessarily traveling internationally and maybe not coming from as far away as they used to. So what does that practically look like to a hotel you're partnering with their digital agency to actually make this come to life?
Sure. So as we've really been challenged with that, we've dug into, what levers do we have to reach that truly localized audience? And, very specifically for weekend business for a hotel, we're typically looking at folks within a 4 to 6 hour drive market. And for extended stays, we're looking at 6+ hours away. It really starts with identifying who is the property's audience, and it's going to be a lot different than it used to be, and what experiences and amenities the property has to really attract people coming to that destination. So for example, city centers have been hit really hard, but one of our city center hotel partners ran a rooftop getaway package that provided a F&B credit to their rooftop, and it was socially distanced, and it's somewhat outside, and we targeted that to a qualified local audience in a getaway style offer, and we saw some success. It's another way for a hotel in a really difficult location to showcase something that is in demand and hopefully generate some local interest. And actually, before COVID even hit, we had really seen a lot of indications pointing towards needing to build more community and engaging with local audiences. And then once mid-March hit, we realized we needed to really deepen our reach within those local communities. And so we launched right at the start of COVID, we launched our connected TV OTT service. So through our programmatic platform, we're now able to place advertising on major streaming channels like a Netflix and Hulu. And these ad placements tend to be a lot more expensive. So not all properties are going to be able to utilize something like this, but it really does add another tool for an independent hotel to use to stand out from the crowd, because those types of streaming channels are all geo-based. So we can really attach what we're doing from a larger digital perspective and integrate that now into the home of those users.
And you manage that? You would manage that for your hotels and the placement and creative and everything?
Yes. Yep. We handle all of that in-house.
Oh, great. Wow. So I think I interrupted you. You had something else to say there, but I found that really interesting.
No, I'm all good on that.
Oh, perfect. So, during this time we saw, even last year, OTA started having some challenges on Google with their advertising and how Google had changed the model and algorithms, et cetera. But as COVID hit, of course, a lot of those ad dollars dropped. And often we look at OTAs, at least I do, and we try to with our hotels, as marketing and advertising partners. And once that guest is there, then we have the direct booking strategies to convert that guest. But with that advertising dropping, do you think hotels benefited from that, or was that a negative for them? What's your thought around that?
Yeah, so overall, we do think that was a benefit for most properties. In general, it's going to depend on the market that the hotel is in, and if they continue to do their marketing, through the early months of COVID. We had clients in destination markets, again, targeting those drive market audiences, and continued to invest in their marketing. And so they saw a lot of success, and they were able to enjoy dramatic decreases in cost per clicks, specifically on Google. The inventory on social media channels was much more attainable in terms of cost, although social media still is much, much less than Google. And so they were really able to enjoy those things. However, if a hotel was or is in a more depressed market, and they weren't able to invest in their own marketing, then obviously they weren't able to enjoy some of those benefits in the early months. And at the same time, OTAs may not have been as active in those markets either, in terms of, because they saw the same trend. But overall, we did see that a lot of our clients were able to reach their audiences at a much less cost than pre-COVID.
And has that changed now? Is that kind of back to more normal levels now? Is it still a little less than it was?
It's still less than it was. And again, still varies pretty wildly by marketplace.
Okay. So I know, well, maybe you do. I mean, do you have a crystal ball?
I left it at the office, so I don't have it with me.
Darn. Well, so I have a crystal ball question for you. So you're going to have to imagine what your crystal ball would tell you. But how do you see Google continuing to change the market going forward? They, as you guys painfully deal with, change algorithms, change certain rules all the time on website optimization and content, all different kinds of things. But how do you see that changing? And then how do you see them playing even more in the hotel space?
Yeah, so I think Google is going to continue to impact the travel industry and the marketing landscape in really big ways in the near term. I foresee there continuing to be more integrations between Google and hospitality booking solutions, so booking engines, CRS providers. Right now it's so easy to pull up a map on a search engine, search for hotels in a given location, see a huge variety of options, get information about the hotel, and make a reservation without ever really leaving Google. And unfortunately, what that means for a hotel is that with every extra step that gets added to that journey, it gets harder for a hotel to grab that person and have them make a direct booking. And, obviously we want to drive direct bookings because there is the lower cost per acquisition, but also we want to know more about that person and what their interests are. So having that balanced digital marketing approach is going to be really critical, so that hotels can continue to kind of compete with the OTAs on that front. Another key point of that is going to be meta search, or is meta. it's a really effective and efficient way to compete with the OTAs. So interesting stat that I just recently came across, metasearch usage has grown over 300% in the last 3 years. And what's even more staggering is that the OTAs get about 30% of their overall revenue through metasearch. That's a huge chunk of business that they're getting. And so I think Google is seeing that and is going to continue to expand that revenue center on their side, as it clearly is quite lucrative for them.
Yeah. So what do you recommend hotels do for metasearch? How can they manage that? What strategies can they put in place to win in that environment?
Sure. So a lot of properties out there are running metasearch through their direct booking engine or CRS provider. GCommerce does have a metasearch offering where we're already handling the media for the rest of the marketing channels, whether it be social, display, paid search. And so having us help with metasearch really helps align, the whole ecosphere as it relates to a hotel's media. And we can assist with, deciding, where to push the emphasis, because there's several different metasearch channels out there, of course, understanding which ones are the best fit for your property, collaborating with the team in terms of what call outs to be using so that you stand out in the Google search results, things like that. So definitely, reach out to us if you don't have a metasearch program running right now, and we can see if we can help you out.
Excellent. So are there any specific campaigns during this last few months that you've done for your hotels that you can share some success stories with us?
Sure. So I mentioned that, that rooftop campaign earlier, and that's a really good example of a truly, super local audience campaign that we've run. We've also seen some really good success with running the, work from anywhere and remote learning from anywhere packages that hotels have started to get on board with. And that's really helped with gathering those longer stays. Most of our clients are focusing on coming up with some creative packaging, and they're seeing some success. It's all about creating that safe environment, showcasing if there's something that people can do outside, reconnect with family, and then serving that to that most qualified audience. Outside of messaging and targeting, it's been, so outside of messaging and packaging, it's been really critical that we change how we're targeting. So historically, we've had properties in LA, for example, that get 30% of their overall revenue from New York and Boston, which are now non-existent. Putting aside all of the traffic and revenue they used to get from international markets like China and Japan. So again, re-engaging that drive market has been really critical. Unfortunately, there's still quite a bit of demand there that's made it successful.
Okay, great. So what are the top 3 things that hotels can do right now to gain market share from the OTAs? We have had some really good success at some of our resorts that we manage with doing a lot of channel shift, which has had an amazing impact to ADR and to their bottom line. What are you seeing work out there? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so number 1 is rate parity. We cannot incentivize people to book direct if there are better prices on an OTA. And we know that a lot of times it's OTAs being sneaky and pushing prices that the hotel didn't authorize necessarily. But all the more reason to invest in some type of rate parity tool that can help automate that for you, so that you can better manage your rates and inventory, and making sure that your website is always seen as the best place to go to get the best rate. Number two would be investing in your digital marketing and really covering the entire ecosphere as best you can, understanding budget limitations. So we talked a little bit about meta search, also investing in your Google ads, specifically on your brand terms, investing in your social presence, even if it's just, Facebook and Instagram. Those are going to be the most important channels for 99.9% of hotels. Ensuring that you have strong reviews, which, just as a reminder to any hotelier, it's a numbers game. So the more reviews you can get, the better your numbers will be. So please don't shy away from reviews. Those are really, really important. And just being ever present across that journey. Because as we talked about, Google is continuing to add more and more steps to that process, and making sure that you're there each step of the way, kind of funneling that person down to the booking is really critical. And then I'd say, the third item would be to make sure you have some type of book direct incentive, on your website, whether it's a perk, flexible cancellation policies, which most properties are doing now, like checkouts, food vouchers, any type of benefit that you can offer, so that you do stand apart from the OTAs.
So moving on a little bit to the review subject, I've seen and read a lot about right now, because hotels don't have all their services open, that they're getting dinged on reviews for it, that people aren't being terribly understanding about the fact that it might take longer to get into the pool, or a couple of the outlets might be closed, or things of that nature. They're not getting daily housekeeping, perhaps. How do you think hotels can do a better job of managing that guest expectation for the reduction of service that is purely COVID related?
Yeah, absolutely. So communication is so important right now. We talked a little bit about having something on your site that just talks about how the hotel's handling COVID and cleaning policies and procedures and things like that. That's where you have an opportunity to really get out in front of this with your guests, whether it be a banner on your website, a pre-stay email that reminds guests, again, just so you know, this is what's going to happen when you get on property. Changing your website content, beyond just a little banner, but throughout the content. If you have a spa and you have different hours, if you have a restaurant that has different procedures, making sure that that's consistent across the board. Not only is that going to help you in the review aspect, but also it's going to help you getting the conversion, because we're seeing a lot of skepticism, from online viewers, where if they go to a website and they don't think the content has been updated recently, they just leave. It's either I'm that interested and I'm going to call because I already know this is where I want to go, but I just need to have, one last question, or it's they didn't give me enough information, so I'm going to move on to the next one. So it's kind of twofold. It's really important to look at all of your communication mechanisms, pre-stay, during stay, and post-stay, and making sure that you're going out of the way to communicate those experiences and those changes in policies, so that there aren't any hidden surprises when people arrive.
For sure. And I think on those guest surveys, even the internal ones that are sent out, everyone needs to take a look at that, because if your pool is not open, if your outlets are not open, they shouldn't be on there for them to give you a 0, right? It should just be not applicable. So those need to be adjusted. I mean, we've seen some who are still asking all the same questions on their post-stay survey. And, you know, and typically that feeds into incentive for your on-property people. And the last thing they need is to be more discouraged by their survey scores and not get any compensation or recognition, you know, for doing a good job through this trying time, because there are all these questions on there that are no longer relevant. So, you know, I think that hotels need to remember the impact of all of that as well. And we've seen some who haven't even made a single change to their departure survey. So what type of digital advertising is really working right now, and what is just falling flat on its face?
Yeah, so social media advertising and paid search continue to be really strong performers for us and our clients. GCommerce actually put out a case study back in August that showcased one of our clients in Laguna Beach and how, you know, in collaboration, we were able to drive 180 times return on ad spend with paid search. And this was during the months of, you know, April, May, June. You know, this particular property was one of the lucky ones where they were able to continue to invest in their marketing during those months when a lot of properties couldn't. So we're really seeing the positive impacts of that. Their path to recovery has been, you know, expedited versus other properties that we have in a similar area, even maybe just a few miles away from this particular property. And so again, it's the ones that can invest in this. I understand that not everyone can, but keep in mind, it really helps you get out in front of the competition if you can. Outside of paid search, on the social media side, we're seeing minimum, you know, 30 to 1, 40 to 1 return on ad spends on a consistent basis. In addition to just targeting the leisure base, we're working with our clients who have event space to really push wedding business right now. And these campaigns are on fire. In 90 days, we were able to hand deliver 382 leads to one of our clients in the Southeast. If just one of those converts to a wedding, it more than pays, you know, for the entire campaign. And you're looking at a budget of around $400 max a month in terms of a Facebook wedding campaign. And so 382 leads gives you a pretty big pool of people to try to, you know, seal the deal. So those types of campaigns are working really, really well.
Guess there must be pent-up demand for weddings as well. People got weddings pushed and lost their venue, and venues aren't open, aren't reopened, right? Some of them, and so people have to find a new place. And yeah, so that's interesting. I can't believe like $400 a month and that kind of return is impressive. So are there any mistakes you've seen hotels make that other hotels need to avoid right now?
Yes, there are.
I thought you were going to say no. No one ever makes a mistake.
Learning. We'll say learning.
Learning. Yes, learning.
So first one would be, we've seen some properties start to jump the gun in terms of trying to reach fly markets. And unfortunately, we just aren't quite there yet as an industry. I'd still encourage hotels to focus on those drive markets, you know, unless you have some really compelling data that tells you otherwise, which I'm not saying doesn't exist, but for most properties, don't pull that trigger quite yet because you're not going to see, you know, much of a return. The other one, I would say, kind of goes back to what you were talking about before around communication. You know, every property needs to be relooking their content, and have you adjusted it since COVID has become such a overwhelming part of all of our lives. Travelers want to know that businesses are keeping up with their website content so they know it's accurate. Again, if you have different restaurant hours, or you're only doing curbside pickup at your hotel restaurant. I mean, all things that need to be documented and put on the website. Kind of going back to the wedding campaigns that we talked about, we can deliver really great traffic and leads to the website, but then have you updated, your brochure material around weddings? And, micro weddings are huge. Do you have an offering that speaks to someone that's looking for a micro wedding or a mini moni, or, any of these new alternative wedding types? But if you think you're going to sell a wedding the same way you did a year and a half ago, it's just not going to happen. And so we have to get out in front of that and communicate. And then, of course, the biggest one is not investing in your marketing. I understand that not every hotel has the cash to literally put down for that paid search campaign or social media campaign. But cutting it all out of your budget is only going to lead to a bigger hole that you have to climb out of later.
For sure. Yeah. I know it's hard. There are tough calls that need to be made, but you have to still be talking to your customers. You have to still be in guest acquisition process. You have to still be out there and visible. And so some money, of course, has to be dedicated to that. So with content, one of the things that's really annoyed me, so I'm going to get on my soapbox, is for hotels that are closed, you have to go search in their booking engine to figure out when they're opening. Like, a lot of them are not putting what date they're reopening. And I don't know if that's because they are unsure, so they're not advertising it, or they just forgot. But I in big markets like New York City, I've been out there searching and had a hard time finding when the hotel's really open unless I page month by month, through availability. What do you suggest to hotels to do about that? I mean, how are people going to know when you reopen?
Yeah. And, I think the reason is across the board. We've had clients who have done that exact same thing. It's, well, we think we're going to open July 1st, but we're not putting anything out there. It's just, if someone goes into the booking engine, they may find a room. It's okay. We understand that there's a time and a place for that, because you maybe haven't committed, to an actual date. Right. But still, lifting that information up to the website would go a really long way in building, that trust and credibility with people coming to check out your hotel. We utilized the Google My Business listings a lot, over the last several months to reflect if a hotel was temporarily closed, which was a great thing that Google rolled out at the start of all of this for all businesses. So we were able to leverage that quite a bit, but we did struggle with, a good handful of our clients that just didn't want to commit to anything. And so they made it really hard for people to understand when they were actually reopening. But assuming that you can commit to a date, making sure that that's readily available. Again, we don't want to hide this information. We don't want to hide that you have different hours or that you have a different procedure. Let's get out in front of it. Let's celebrate the fact that you're open and that you still have all these amazing things that you can offer to your guests. Yes, there are some inconveniences, but there's ways to position that and put a really positive spin. So overall, I'd say the recommendation would be is don't hide from it, own it, and make it as readily available as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, the way I look at that is sort of like I look at a hotel that's in pre-opening. You put a date out there of when you're going to open, and if you have to shift, then you communicate with those guests. You may have to relocate them, but there's availability at other hotels right now, let's face it. So, it's not a bad thing, in my opinion, to be maybe a little bit unsure, but to go ahead and put a line in the sand and say, we're going to start with this. And if we have to push it, and in talking to our customer in Hawaii, they've had to communicate that over and over again because the governor kept extending the date and extending the date. So they kept having to go back and say, hey, you can't come in August. Do you want to come in November? I think there is definitely precedent set, and it's all about communication and making sure that guests are aware of what's happening. So I have a question from the audience, and just a reminder to everyone out there, you certainly can submit questions in chat. So this question says, your thoughts on hotels collaborating with local attractions, restaurants, shops to help to try to boost revenue, increase marketing and social media presence, and support small businesses in their community?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've actually had some really good success, during COVID, but also pre-COVID in helping properties identify small businesses, shops, restaurants, within their immediate area, and almost making those part of your experience. So you literally partner with these businesses to a degree where instead of having the standard amenities in your room where it's, the M&M, Snickers, things like that, why don't you have, some prepackaged goods from the bakery up the street? There was one property where they had partnered even with a lingerie, but not risque, but lingerie and nightgown type boutique that was up the road. And so they offered robes in the room that were made by that boutique. And right now, again, fostering that type of community is going to go a really long way outside of COVID. If you look at where the trends are going in terms of what people are looking for and the types of engagement people are looking for from brands, it is fostering that local community and feeling like they're part of something. So the more that you can tie that to your immediate area and the businesses around you, you're going to see, a lot of success and a lot of engagement from that.
Great. Yeah, no, great question there, Victor. So describe the best hotel agency relationship that you've experienced at GCommerce and what made it so good?
Yeah, so the best relationships that we have are with properties that are really invested in making this partnership work. We want to work hand in hand with our clients and truly be an extension of their business. I always tell our clients when they first launch with us, try to envision us just in the room next door. We're just literally one door over, but you have to call us, or these days, Zoom call us. But we really mean that, and we want to be integrated. And so when clients take us up on that, we do our best work. We have a really incredibly talented group of people. But at the end of the day, your property better than we do. And so we need that constant flow of communication. And we will reciprocate it in terms of what's working and what isn't, and how we're pivoting. But we need to know what those immediate business needs are so that we can act quickly and be as agile as you need us to be. So really, when our hotel partners think of us as a partner and not a vendor, that's when we do our best work.
Oh, yeah, for sure. When someone is more of a partner versus a vendor, what type of things do they get engaged in with you? Are they just more, do they have more interaction with you? Do they ask more questions? Are they, including you in their internal marketing meetings versus, communicating afterwards? I mean, what are some of the practical things that they do with you that make it work?
Yeah, really all of the above.
Okay.
A lot of it is increased communication. it's rare for us to not talk to every single one of our clients every other day. It's just, it's foreign to us. We start to get uncomfortable with it. And, you know, being included in the larger business discussion is one of the things that we do for a lot of our top tier clients. And having more face-to-face meetings. I mean, pre-COVID, we were visiting our clients at least on an annual basis, if not more frequently than that. And because we really feel it's important, not only for us to get to the property and see the latest things that are going on, but also just continue to build that relationship face-to-face. So those are some of the, you know, the key things that we look for.
You know, I've personally sat in some of those meetings with your team there, the hotel team there, our team there, and they are very fruitful. You always come out with a solid plan at the end, and it's not a one-page plan that doesn't have meat in it. It's not a 200-page plan that you sit on a shelf and don't look at throughout the year. So, you know, we can attest to the fact that, you know, you really become part of the team, as do we, in working with our hotel clients to make them successful. And I think that's, it's so important. You know, I've never come to GCommerce and had what's called a no face, you know, like, oh no, I don't think we can do that. You know, occasionally you have to charge a fee or something for some additional things, but it's never, that's not our job. So, you know, I think that, and we do work with other agencies who do respond more in that manner. And so, you know, I think the collaborative nature of what you do and how you work with your clients is one of your top selling features, if I might promote GCommerce for a moment.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's definitely what we strive for every day. And honestly, having partners like you guys too make us better when we can collaborate on additional aspects of the business that, you know, maybe the hotel team just doesn't have that bandwidth for, but it's not in our wheelhouse. So again, having partners like you guys is really helpful too.
Yeah. You know, my head of revenue and analytics on my team, Elise, eats up everything you guys publish because she loves the fact that it's data and it's analytical. And, you know, how have you guys developed that side of your company? Because you seem to really produce a lot of really meaty advice to hotels that you're sending out newsletters for free. Yeah,
so thank you, first of all, but we are pretty critical of what people put out in terms of content, and we always strive to be useful. We don't want to put content out there just to say, well, we put something out there this week. And, you know, there's been times recently where I tell the marketing team, well, there's nothing that's useful this week that is ready to go to market, so we're just not going to say anything. There's no point just putting noise out there when it's not going to be useful. But, you know, how we've been able to do that, especially over the last 7 months, has been a lot due to us investing in our reporting platform. We have a cloud-based reporting system that's available to our clients and our team 24/7. And so if you know, middle of the night, you want to know how your campaign is doing, feel free and log on and check that out. So as we're developing our strategies for our clients, we're also gathering insights for ourselves in terms of these larger trends and what we're seeing, and we're able to, you know, pull those down and put them into more meaningful blogs and insights and things like that. So it's been a huge help for us.
Excellent. Well, Elise just commented, and it's very relevant. Thank you. So yeah, keeping it useful, keeping it relevant, giving good information, consumable data, as Elise likes to say. So we appreciate that. So we've just got a couple more questions. If anyone from the audience wants to ask a question, please feel free. But what are the most important KPIs to measure the success of your digital strategy? What should hotels really be looking at right now?
So in our opinion, there is no KPI more important than revenue. Return on ad spend gets a lot of attention in our industry, and it is important, but I'll often say you can't take return on ad spend to the bank. You can't deposit it. If you are seeing increased revenues, but a return on ad spend of 5-to-1 when you really want a 10-to-1, well, balance that against having the additional revenue. Was that worth it or not? Return on ad spend is really meant to be a guide in terms of which channels are performing most efficiently, but it's not the end all be all. And so you don't want to throw out, an entire campaign or an entire channel just because you're not reaching what you think that return should be. Certainly if there is no return, then that's a different situation. But we see clients jumping the gun a lot in terms of, well, I've read that I should have a 10-to-1 at all times on this. Okay, well, we're averaging about an 8-to-1 on this right now, but we're $200,000 up from last year. Are you happy about that? And so it's a balance, but really revenue is going to be our primary metric, because again, our marketing metrics are all leading up to that conversion. And if they don't eventually turn into revenue, then it doesn't matter. Outside of revenue itself, we're really focused on conversion rate. We look at how can we optimize conversion rate overall on your website, as well as by channel. So if we can increase a conversion rate, on your website by 0.1%, that can mean, tens of thousands of dollars for a property. So really diving into that and trying to optimize that is where we focus most.
Yeah, I like that focus on revenue, because I was just going to say, if you're earning $1 and you quadruple that, you're to $4. But if you're earning $200,000 and you double that, you're earning $400,000. So people have to look at it as that revenue metric. I think that's really great piece of advice. And what else were you going to say?
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say, and then outside of specific metrics, just making sure you're looking at the data and that your data is readily available to you is really important. I mentioned it a minute ago about our cloud-based reporting system, but having that available to our team and the client at any time really helps, not only with the transparency, within the relationship, but it helps us make quick decisions, and they're all data driven. It's not, well, we have to wait a month to get you a report to then decide what we're going to do next. So making sure you have some type of infrastructure in place that lets you see that information consistently is really important.
Great. So does that tool kind of bring in all the Google Analytics information and actually make it make sense to the normal person who doesn't look at Google Analytics all day long?
Yes, exactly. And we've really curated the most important aspects from each channel. So we have really any digital marketing channel specific to hotels and even some outside of hotels. We have connections, and it's bringing all of that data in and surfacing it in a way that's much more understandable. So yeah, we've really hand curated, what we think is most important for anyone to be looking at.
Excellent. So last question, unless I get one from the audience. If you could give hotels one word of advice for recovery, what would you tell them?
Remember who you are as a brand and live up to that brand promise to the fullest in everything you do. In your interactions with your guests, to your website messaging, to your advertising, to how you respond to reviews. Community and connections are so important right now, in general too, but even more so because of COVID. And you really need to be authentic in order to keep your audience engaged and trusting you. So, and once you have that trust, you'll see the monetary success on the other side.
Absolutely. Great word of advice. So I just want to give a plug for next week, and then we're going to say goodbye to Lindley. Next week, we're having one of my favorite HR people ever that I was at a team, and she was my HR SVP, and her name is Grace. And she is going to be on to talk about your personal brand and how you might, unfortunately, we know a lot of jobs have been lost in our industry, and some people are having to either migrate to different verticals in our industry, or, going from a hotel to a tech company, or they might be going to a completely different industry right now. So it's really intended to be a service for everyone to learn about how can I ensure that I have a personal brand, and how can I look for a job in a pandemic. And so if you know anyone who's lost their job, if you're on Hospitality Family, I've posted on there, we would love to have people on who are in the job search process right now, because I think it's going to be some super practical advice to hopefully help you get your next position. And I also believe that those of us who are gainfully employed have a lot of friends in our industry who have unfortunately are in this place. So if we could give some advice to them to help them along the way, I think this will be a great opportunity for us to give back to the industry and try to help people have gainful employment, and really hopefully encourage everyone that it is possible to find a job right now while it's difficult. But hopefully we can give you a leg up on that next week, same time, same channel. So Lindley, thank you so much for being here today. It was very beneficial, getting great feedback from people saying how informative it was and practical. So truly appreciate you, appreciate GCommerce partnership, and stay healthy, stay well, and we'll talk to you again soon.